friend of mine from Boston had his elderly father in a condo in Florida, not uncommon. And when the father went into assisted living, the refrigerator broke and it was out of warranty. So my friend went to Florida, figured out what was wrong, said, oh, I need a new thermostat, ordered the thermostat, stuck around till the thermostat arrived, put it in, and it didn't work. And so he called GE because he'd bought the part from GE. And he says, you didn't provide me. There's a password. I need a password. And GE says, oh, you can't have the password. You have to have a GE authorized tech come in to insert the password. And that to me is the ultimate in stupid.
That's Gordon-Byrne with an example of how companies often prevent people from fixing things that they own in ways that are as infuriating as they are absurd. I'm Cindy Cohn, the Executive Director of the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
And I'm Jason Kelley, EFF's Activism Director. This is our podcast series, How to Fix the Internet. Our guest today, Gordon-Byrne, is the Executive Director of the Repair Association, where she's been advocating for years for legislation that will give consumers the right to buy products that are repairable and reusable, rather than things that need to be replaced outright every few years or as soon as they break.
The right to repair is something we fight for a lot at EFF, and the topic has come up frequently on this podcast. In Season 3, we spoke to Adam Savage about it.
I was trying to fix one of my bathroom faucets a couple weeks ago, and I called up a 10-year-old Grohe service manual video of how to repair this faucet. And we all love YouTube for that, right? Because anything you want to fix, whether it's this thing or your video camera, there's someone who's taken it apart, whether they're in Micronesia or Australia, it doesn't matter. But the moment someone figures out that they can make a bunch of dough from that, I'm sure you would see companies start to no, you can't put up those repair videos. You can only put up these repair videos. And we all lose when that happens.
In an era where both the cost of living and environmental concerns are top of mind, the right to repair is more important than ever. It addresses both sustainability and affordability concerns.
And we're especially excited to talk to Gay right now because the right to repair is a movement that is on its way up, and we've been seeing progress in recent months and years. We started off by asking her where things stand right now in the United States.
We've had 4 states actually pass statute for right to repair, covering a variety of different equipment, and there's 45 states that have introduced right to repair over the past few years, so we expect there will be more bills finishing. Getting them started is easy, getting them over the finish line is hard.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We just passed a right to repair bill here in California, where EFF is based. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and do you see it as a harbinger or just another step along the way?
Well, honestly, I see it as another step along the way because 3 states actually had already passed laws. Mm-hmm. In California, Apple decided that they weren't going to object any further to right to repair laws, but they did have some conditions that are kind of unique to California because Apple is so influential in California. But it is a very strong bill for consumer products. It just doesn't extend to non-consumer products.
Ah, that's great. And do you know what made Apple change their mind? Because they had been staunch opponents, right? And EFF has battled with them in various different areas around Section 1201 and other things. And then it seemed like they changed their minds. And I wondered if you had some insights about that.
I take full responsibility.
Yay! Hey, getting a big company to change their position like that is no small feat, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Oh, it doesn't happen overnight. And what's interesting is that New York actually passed a bill that Apple tried to negotiate and kind of really didn't get to do it in New York that starts in January. So there was a pressure point already in place. New York is not an insignificant size state. And then Minnesota passed a much stronger bill that also takes effect, I think, I might be wrong on this, I think also in January. And so the wheels were already turning. I think the idea of inevitability had occurred to Apple that they'd be on the wrong side of all their environmental claims if they didn't at least make a little bit more of a sincere effort to make things repairable.
Yeah, I mean, they have been horrible about this from the very beginning with, custom kinds of dongles and difficulty in repairing. And again, we fought them around Section 1201, which is the ability to circumvention so that you can see how something works and build tools that will let you fix them. It's just no small feat from where we sit to get the winds to change such that even Apple puts their finger up and says, I think the winds are changing. We better get on the right side of history.
Yeah, that's what we've been trying to do for the past. When did we get started? I got started in 2010. The organization got started in 2013. So we've been
Yeah.
at it a full 10 years as an actual organization. But the problems with Apple and other manufacturers existed long before.
Yep.
So, yeah, the 1201 problems still exist.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the problem that we're trying to move in federally. But oh my God. I thought moving legislation in states was hard and long.
Yeah, the federal system is different. And I think that one of the things that we've experienced, though, is when the states start leading, eventually the feds begin to follow. Now, often they follow with the idea that they're going to water down what the states do. That's why, EFF and I think a lot of organizations rally around this thing called preemption, which doesn't really sound like a thing you want to rally around, but it ends up being the way in which you make sure that the feds aren't putting the brakes on the states in terms of doing the right things, and that you create space for states to be more bold. It's sometimes not the best thing for a company that has to sell in a bunch of different markets, but it's certainly better than letting the federal processes come in and essentially damp down what the states are doing.
You're totally right. One of our biggest fears is that someone will actually get a bill moving for right to repair, and it's obviously going to be highly lobbied, and we will probably not have the same quality of results as we have in states. So we would like to see more states pass more bills so that it's harder and harder for the federal government to preempt the states.
Yep.
In the meantime, we're also making sure that the states don't preempt the federal government, which is another source of friction. So,
oh my gosh.
yeah, preemption is a big problem.
Goes both ways. In our Section 1201 fights, we're fighting the Green case, Green versus Department of Justice. And the big issue there is that while we can get exemptions under 1201 for actual circumvention, the tools that you need in order to circumvent, you can't get an exception for. And so you have this kind of strange situation in which you technically have the right to repair your device, but nobody can help you do that, and nobody can give you the tools to do it. So it's this weird, sometimes I call it the, it's legal to be in Arizona, but it's illegal to go to Arizona kind of law. No offense, Arizona.
Yeah, that's very much the case.
You mentioned, Gay, that you've been doing this work. Well, probably you've been doing the work a lot longer than the time you've been with the coalition and the Repair Association. But we'll get to the brighter future that we want to look towards here in a second. But before we get to the way we want to fix things and how it'll look when we do, can you just take us back a little bit and tell us more about how we got to a place where you actually have to fight for your right to repair the things that you buy? 50 years ago, I think most people would just assume that appliances, and I don't know if you would call them devices, but things that you purchased, you could fix or you could bring to a repair shop. And now we have to force companies to let us fix things. I know there's a lot of history there, but is there a short version of how we ended up in this place where we have to fight for this right to repair?
Yeah, there is a short version. It's called about 20 years ago, right after Y2K. It became possible because of the improvements in the internet for manufacturers to basically host a repair manual or a user guide online and expect their customers to be able to retrieve that information for free. Otherwise, they had to print, they had to ship. It's a cost. So it started out as a cost reduction strategy on the part of manufacturers. And at first, it seemed really cool because it really solved a problem. I used to have manuals that came in like huge desktop sets that were 4 feet of paper. And every month we'd get pages that we had to replace because the manual had been updated. So it was a huge savings for manufacturers, a big convenience for consumers and for businesses. And then no aspersions on lawyers, but my opinion is that some lawyer decided they wanted to know, they should know, for reasons we have no idea because they still don't make sense, that they should know who's accessing their website. So then they started requiring a login and a password, things like that. And then another bright light, possibly a lawyer, but most likely a CFO, said, we should charge people to get access to the website. And that slippery slope got really slippery really fast. So it became obvious that you could save a lot of money by not providing manuals, not providing diagnostics, and then not selling parts. I mean, if you didn't want to sell parts, you didn't have to. There was no law that said you have to sell parts or tools or diagnostics. And that's where we've been for 20 years. And everybody that gets away with it has encouraged everybody else to do it, to the point where I don't think Cindy would disagree with me. I mean, I took a look, as did Nathan Proctor of US PIRG, when we were getting ready to go before the FTC. And we said, I wonder how many companies are actually selling parts and tools and manuals. And Nathan came up with a similar statistic. Roughly 90% of the companies don't.
Wow.
So we have now gone from a situation where everybody could fix anything if they were really interested to 90% of stuff not being fixable. And that number is getting worse, not better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the short story. It's been a bad 20 years.
It's funny because I think it's such a testament to people's desire to want to fix their own things that despite this, you can go on YouTube if something breaks and you can find some nice person who will walk you through how to fix lots and lots of devices that you have. And to me, that's a testament to the human desire to want to fix things and the human desire to want to teach other people how to fix things, that despite all these obstacles, there is this thriving world. YouTube's not the only place, but it's kind of the central place where you can find nice people who will help tell you how to fix your things despite it being so hard and getting harder to have that knowledge and the information you need to do it.
I would also add to that there's a huge business of repair.
Yeah.
That we're not strictly fighting for people's rights to be able to do it yourself.
Right.
In fact, most people, again, back to some kind of general statistics, most people, somewhere around 85% of them, really don't want to fix their own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They may fix some stuff, but they don't want to fix all stuff. But the options of having somebody help them have also gone just downhill
Yeah.
massively in the last 20 years and really bad in the past 10 years. So the industry that current employment used to be about 3 million people in the industry of repair, and that kind of spanned auto repair and a bunch of other things. But those people don't have jobs if people can't fix their stuff.
Yep.
Because the only way they can be in business is to know that they can buy a part, to know that they can buy the tool, to know that they can get a hold of the schematic and the diagnostics. So these are the things that have thwarted business as well as do it yourself. And I think most people, especially the people I know, really expect to be able to fix their things.
Yeah.
I think we've been told that we don't. And the reality is we do.
Yeah, I think that's right. And one of the kind of stories that people have been told is that if there's a silicon chip in it, you just can't fix it. That's just places things beyond repair. And I think that that's been a myth. And I think a lot of people have always known it's a myth. Certainly in EFF's community, we have a lot of hardware hackers. We even have, lots of software hackers that know that the fact that there's a chip involved doesn't mean that it's a disposable item. But I wondered, from your perspective, have you seen that as well?
Oh, absolutely. People are told that these things are too sophisticated, that they're too complex,
Yeah.
They're too small. All of these things that are not true. And, you got 20 years of a drumbeat of just massive marketing against repair. The budgets for people that are saying you can't fix your stuff are far greater than the budgets of the people that say you can.
Yeah.
So thank you, Tim Cook and Apple, because you've made this an actual point of advocacy. Every time Apple does something dastardly, and they do it pretty often, every new release, there's something dastardly in it.
Yeah.
We get to get more people behind hey, I want to fix my phone,
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's one of the wonderful things about the right to repair movement is that you're surfing people's natural tendencies. The idea that you have to throw something away as soon as it breaks is just so profoundly, I think it's actually an international human, desire to be able to fix these kinds of things and be able to make something that you own work for you. So it's always been profoundly strange to have companies kind of building this throwaway culture. It reminds me a little of the privacy fights where we've had also 20 years of companies trying to convince us that your privacy doesn't matter and you don't care about it, and that the world's better if you don't have any privacy. And on one level, that is certainly succeeded in building surveillance business models. But on the other hand, I think it's profoundly against human tendencies. So those of us on the side of privacy and repair, the benefit of us is we're kind of riding with how people want to be in the kind of world they want to live in against, kind of very powerful, well-funded forces who are trying to convince us we're different than we are.
Let's take a quick moment to say thank you to our sponsor. How to Fix the Internet is supported by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation's Program in Public Understanding of Science and Technology. enriching people's lives through a keener appreciation of our increasingly technological world and portraying the complex humanity of scientists, engineers, and mathematicians. And now, back to our conversation with Gay Gordon-Byrne. At the top of the episode, Gay told us a story about a refrigerator that couldn't be fixed unless a licensed technician, for a fee, obviously, was brought in to enter a password into a fridge, even though the person who owned the fridge had sourced the new part and installed it.
And that illustrates to me the damage that's being done by this concept of parts pairing, which is where only the manufacturer can make the part work. So even if you can find a part, even if you can put it in, you can't make it work without calling the manufacturer again, which kind of violates the whole idea that you bought it and you own it and they shouldn't have anything to do with it after that.
Yep.
So these things are pervasive. We see it in all sorts of stuff. The refrigerator one really infuriates me.
Yeah, we've seen it with printer cartridges. We've seen it with garage door openers, for sure. I recently had an espresso machine that broke and couldn't get it fixed because the company that made it doesn't make parts available for people in that. That's a hard lesson. It's one of the things when you're buying something is to try to figure out, is this actually repairable or not? Making that information available is something that our friends at Consumer Reports have done and other people have done, but it's still a little hard to find sometimes.
Yeah, that information gap is enormous. There are some resources, they're not great. None of them are comprehensive enough to really do the job, but there's an index de repairability in France that covers a lot of consumer tech, cell phones and laptops and things along those lines. It's not hard to find, but it's in French. So use Google Translate or something and you'll see what they have to say. That's actually had a pretty good impact on a couple companies. For example, Samsung, which had never put out a manual before, had to put out a manual in order to be rated in France. So they did.
Nice.
The same manual they didn't put out in the US and English.
Oh my God.
It's amazing. So let's flip this around a little bit. What does the world look like if we get it right? What does a repairable world look like? How is it when you live in it, Gay? Give me a day in the life of somebody who's living in the fixed version of the world.
Well, you will be able to buy things that you can fix or have somebody fix them for you. And one of the consequences is that you will see more repair shops back in your town. It will be possible for some enterprising person that'll open up again the kinds of shops we used to have when we were kids.
Yep.
You'll see a TV repair shop, an appliance repair shop, an electronics repair shop. In fact, it might be one repair shop because some of these things are all being fixed in the same way. So you'll see more economic activity in the area of repair. You'll also see, and this is a hope, that manufacturers, if they're going to make their products more repairable in order to look better, it's more of a PR and a marketing thing. If they're going to compete on the basis of repairability, they're going to have to start making their products more repairable from the get-go.
Yep.
They're probably going to have to stop gluing everything together. Europe has been pretty big on making sure that things are made with fasteners instead of glue. I think we're going to see more activity along those lines and more use of replaceable batteries. Why should a battery be glued in? That seems like a pretty stupid thing to do.
Yep.
So I think we'll see some improvements along the line of sustainability in the sense that we'll be able to keep our things longer and use them until we're done with them, not to when the manufacturer decides they want to sell you a new one, which is really the cycle that we have today.
Yeah, planned obsolescence, I think, is what the marketers call it. I love a vision of the world. When I grew up in a small town in Iowa, and we had the people called the gearheads, right? They were the ones who were always tinkering with cars. And of course, you could take your appliances to them and other kinds of things because people who know how to take things apart and figure out how they work tend to know that about multiple things. So I'd love a future of the world where the kind of gearheads arise again and are around to help us keep our stuff longer and keep our stuff again. I think what I really appreciate what you say, like when we're done with them. I mean, I love innovation. I love new toys. I think that's really great. But the idea that when I'm done with something, it goes into a trash heap or, into some place where you have to have fancy help to make sure that you're not endangering the planet. Like, that's not a very good world.
Well, look at your example of your espresso machine. You weren't done with it.
No.
It quit. It quit. You can't fix it. You can't make another cup of espresso with it. That's not what you planned. That's not what you wanted.
Yep.
I think we all have stories like the espresso machine, and that's part of why this is such a tangible topic for everyone. Maybe I'm not alone in this, but I love, thrift stores and places like that where I can get something that maybe someone else was tired of. I was walking past a house a few years ago and someone had put a laptop that the screen had been damaged just next to the trash. And I thought, that looks like a pretty nice laptop. And I grabbed it. It was a pretty new, like 1-year-old Microsoft Surface tablet laptop. Anyway, I took it to a repair shop and they were able to repair it for like way less than the cost of buying a new one. And I had a new laptop, essentially. And I don't think they gave me extra service because I worked at EFF, but they were certainly happy to help because I worked at EFF. But then, these things do eventually sort of give up, right? That laptop lasted me about 3 years and then had so many issues that I just kind of had to get rid of it. Where do you think in the better future we should put the things that are sort of unfixable? Do we bring them to a repair shop and they pull out the pieces that work like a junkyard that they can reuse? Is there a better system for disposing of the different pieces or the different devices that we can't repair? How do you think about that more sustainable future once everything is better in the first place in terms of being able to repair things?
Excellent question. We have a number of members that are what we call charitable recyclers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a model for more rather than less. They don't even have to be gently used. They just have to be potentially useful. And they'll take them in, they will fix them, they will train people, often people that have some employment challenges, especially coming out of the criminal justice system, and they'll train them to make repairs, and they both get a skill, a marketable skill for future employment, and they also turn around and then resell those devices to make money to keep the whole system going. But in the commercial recycling business, there's a lot of value in the things that have been discarded if they can have their batteries removed before they are, quote, recycled. Because recycling is a very messy business and it requires physical contact with the device to the point that it's shredded or crushed. And if we can intercept some of that material before it goes to the crusher, we can reuse more of that material. And I think a lot of it can be reused very effectively in downstream markets, but we don't have those markets because we can't fix the products that are broken.
Yeah. There's a whole chain of good that starts happening if we can begin to start fixing things, right? It's not just the individuals get to fix the things that they get, but it sets off kind of a cycle of things that are a happy cycle of things that get better all along the way.
Yep. And that can happen right now. Well, I should say, as soon as these laws start taking effect, because a lot of the information, parts, and tools that are required under the laws are immediately useful.
Right. So tell me, how do these laws work? The good ones anyway. What are they doing? How are things changing with the current flock of laws that are just now coming online?
Well, they're all pretty much the same. They require manufacturers of things that they already repair, so there's some limitations right there, to make available on fair and reasonable terms the same parts, tools, diagnostics, and firmware that they already provide to their, quote, authorized or their subcontract repair providers, because our original intent was to restore competition. So the bills are really a pro-competition law as opposed to an e-waste law. Because these don't cover everything. They cover a lot of stuff, but not everything. California is a little bit different in that they already had a statute that required things of under $50 or under $100 to be covered for 3 years. They have some dates in there that expand the effectiveness of the bill into products that don't even have repair options today. But the bills that we've been promoting are a little softer, because the intent is competition, because we want to see what competition can do. When we unlock competition, what that does for consumers.
Yeah, and I think that dovetails nicely into something EFF has been working on quite a while now, which is interoperability, right? One of the things that unlocks competition is, requiring people to build their tools and services in a way that are interoperable with others. That helps both with repair and with kind of follow-on innovation that, you can switch up how your Facebook feed shows up based on what you want to see rather than based upon what Facebook's algorithm wants you to see, or other kinds of changes like that. And how do you see interoperability fitting into all of this?
I think there will be more. It's not specific to the law, but I think it will simply happen as people try to comply with the law.
You founded the Repair Association. So tell us a little bit about how that got started and how you decided to dedicate your life to this. I think it's really important for us to think about like the people that are needed to build a better world, as well as the, kind of technologies and ideas.
I was always in the computer industry. I grew up with my father, who was a computer architect in the 50s and 60s. So I never knew a world that didn't involve computers. It was what Dad did. And then when I needed a job out of college and having bounced around a little bit and found not a great deal of success, my father encouraged me to take a job selling computers because that was the one thing he had never done and thought that it was missing from his resume. And I took to it like, fish to water. I loved it. I had a wonderful time and a wonderful career. But by the mid 2000s, I was done. I mean, I was like, I can't stand this job anymore. So I decided to retire. I didn't like being retired. I started doing other things. And eventually I started doing some work with a group of companies that repair large mainframes. I've known them. I mean, my former boss was the president. It was kind of a natural. And they started having trouble with some of the manufacturers. And I said, that's wrong. I mean, I had this sense of indignation that what Oracle had done when they bought Sun was just flatly wrong and it was illegal. And I volunteered to join a committee. And that's when I got involved. And it was basically, I tell people I over-volunteered.
Yeah.
And what happened is that because I was the only person in that organization that didn't already have relationships with manufacturers, that they couldn't bite the hand that fed them.
Yeah.
I was elected chief snowball thrower, AKA executive director. So it was a passion project that I could afford to do because otherwise I was going to stay home and knit.
Yeah.
So this is way better than knitting or quilting these days. Way more fun, way more gratifying. I've had a truly wonderful experience. Met so many fabulous people. I have a great sense of impact that I would never have had with quilting.
I just love the story of somebody who kind of put a toe in and then realized, oh my God, this is so important. And I found this thing where I can make the world better. And then you just get you get sucked in, but it's fun. What I really appreciate about the Repair Association and the Right to Repair People is that while, they're working with very serious things, they also, there's a lot of fun in making the world a better place. And it's kind of fun to be involved in the Right to Repair right now because after a long time kind of shouting in the darkness, there's some traction starting to happen. So then the fun gets even more fun.
I can tell you we're so surprised. I mean, we've had well over 100 bills filed. Yeah. And, every year we get a little further, we get past this committee and this hurdle and this hurdle and this hurdle. And we get almost to the end and then something would happen.
Yep.
And to finally get to the end where the bill becomes law, it's like the dog that chases the car.
Yeah.
And you go, we caught the car, now what?
Yeah. Now you get to fix it, the car.
Yeah, now you can repair the car. That was such a wonderful, optimistic conversation, and not the first one we've had this season. But this one is interesting because we're actually already getting where we want to be. We're already building the future that we want to live in. And it's just really, really pleasing to be able to talk to someone who's in the middle of that and making sure that work happens.
I mean, one of the things that really struck me is how much of the better future that we're building together is really about creating new jobs and new opportunities for people to work. I think there's a lot of fear right now in our community that the future isn't going to have work and that without a social safety net or other kinds of things, it's really going to hurt people. And I so appreciated hearing about how, Main Street's going to have more jobs. There's going to be people in your local community who can fix your things locally, because devices, those are things where having a local repair community and businesses is really helpful to people. And so I also kind of, the flip side of that is this interesting observation that one of the things that's happened as a result of shutting off the right to repair is an increasing centralization, that the jobs that are happening in this thing are not happening locally, and that by unlocking the right to repair, we're going to unlock some local opportunities for economic things. I mean, EFF thinks about this both in terms of empowering users, but also in terms of competition. And the thing about right to repair is it really does unlock kind of hyper-local competition.
I hadn't really thought about how specifically local it is to have a repair shop that you can just bring your device to. And right now it feels like the options are, if you live near an Apple store, for example, maybe you can bring your phone there and then they send it somewhere. I'd much rather go to someone, in my town that I can talk to and who can tell me about what needs to be done. That's such a benefit of this movement that a lot of people aren't even really putting on the forefront, but it really is something that will help people actually get work and help the people who need the work and the people who need the job done.
Another thing that I really appreciate about the right to repair movement is how universal it is. Everyone experiences some version of this, that, from the refrigerator story to my espresso machine to any number of other stories to the farmers, like everyone has some version of how this needs to be fixed. And the other thing that I really appreciate about Gay's stories about the right to repair movement is that, she's somebody who comes out of computers and was thinking about this from the context of computers and didn't really realize that farmers were having the same problem. Of course, we all kind of know analytically that a lot of the movement in a lot of industries is towards, centralizing computers and making, tractors are now computers with gigantic wheels, cars are now computers with smaller wheels, that computers have become central to these kinds of things. But I think the realization that we have silos of users who are experiencing the same problem, depending on what kind of tool they're using, and connecting those silos together so that together we stand as a much bigger voice is something that the right to repair folks have really done well, and it is a good lesson for the rest of us.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit with Adam Savage when he was on a while ago about this sort of gatekeeping and how effective it is to remove the gatekeepers from these movements and say, we're all fighting the same fight. And it just goes to show you that it actually works. I mean, not only does it get everybody on the same page, but unlike a lot of movements, I think you can really see the impact that the right to repair movement has had. And we talked with Gay about this, and it really, I think, should make people come away optimistic that advocacy like this works over time. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And we have actually crested a sort of hill in some ways. There's a lot of work to be done, but it's actually work that we probably will be able to get done and that we're seeing the benefits of today.
Yeah. And as we start to see benefits, we're going to start to see more benefits. I appreciate her. We're in the hole plugging period where, we got something passed and we need to plug the holes. But I also think once people start feeling the power of having the right to repair again, I hope it will help snowball. One of the things that she said that I have observed as well is that sometimes it feels like nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden it's all happening. And I think that that's one of the flows of advocacy work that I've observed over time. And it's fun to see the Right to Repair Coalition kind of getting to experience that wave, even if it can be a little overwhelming sometimes.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of How to Fix the Internet. If you have feedback or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. Visit EFF.org/podcast and click on Listener Feedback. While you're there, you can become a member, donate, maybe pick up some merch, and just see what's happening in digital rights this week and every week. This podcast is licensed Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International and includes music licensed Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 unported by their creators. In this episode, you heard Come Inside by Zep Herm, featuring Snowflake, and Drops of H2O, the filtered water treatment by Jay Lang, featuring Airtone. You can find links to their music in our episode notes or on our website at EFF.org/podcast. Our theme music is by Nat Keefe of Beatmower with Reed Mathis. How to Fix the Internet is supported by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation's Program in Public Understanding of Science and Technology. I hope you'll join us again soon. I'm Jason Kelley.
And I'm Cindy Cohen.